Crime and Punishment, Fyodor Dostoyevsky. Video 3, Part 1, Chapter 1. How much will you give me for the watch, Alyona Ivanovich? Well, dearie, you come to me with such rubbish. It's practically worthless. I let you have 2 tickets for that ring last time. And you could buy one new at the jeweller's for ₹1.50. Let me have 4. I promise I'll redeem it. It belonged to my father. I'm expecting some money soon. ₹1.50. And the interest in advance, that's the best I can do. ₹1.50, the young man exclaimed. It's up to you. And the old woman handed his watch back to him. The young man took it, so angry that he nearly stormed out of the apartment. He at once had second thoughts, however, remembering there was nowhere else he could try, and that in any case he had another purpose for the visit. All right, go on then, he said roughly. The old woman reached into her pocket for her keys and went behind the curtain into the other room. Left alone in the middle of the room, the young man listened curiously, trying to work out what she was doing. He could hear her unlocking the chest of drawers. It must be the top drawer, he thought. So she keeps her keys in her right-hand pocket, all in one bunch on a steel ring. And there's one key there that's bigger than all of the others, 3 times the size, with a notched bit. It can't be the one to the chest of drawers, obviously. So there must be some kind of box or chest in there too. That's interesting. Chests often have keys like that. God, how dishonourable all of this is. The old woman returned. Now then, dearie, the interest's 10% a month. So on ₹1.50, you owe me 15 kopecks, payable in advance. You also owe me 20 kopecks on the 2 rubles you had before. That comes to 35 kopecks. So what you get for your watch is ₹1.15. Here you are. What? It's down to ₹1.15 now, is it? That's right, dearie. The young man did not attempt to argue and took the money. He looked at the old woman and made no sign of being in a hurry to leave, as though there was something else he wanted to say or do. But he did not quite know what it was. He didn't quite know what it was. I may bring you something else in a day or two, Alyona Ivanova. An item of silver, good quality, a cigarette case. As soon as I get it back from a friend of mine. He grew confused and fell silent. Right you are then, dearie. We'll talk about it when you come again. Goodbye then. I say, do you spend all of your time in here alone? Isn't your sister around? He asked as casually as he could, going out into the hallway. And what would you be wanting with her, dearie? Nothing in particular. I was simply asking. I mean, just now you... Goodbye, Alyona Ivanovich. Raskolnikov went out feeling decidedly confused. The confusion got worse and worse. As he descended the stairs, he even stopped several times, as though he had been struck by some sudden thought. And, at last, when he was out upon the street, he exclaimed, "Oh God, how loathsome all of this is! And could I really? Could I really? No, it's nonsensical, it's absurd." He added firmly, "How could I really ever have contemplated such a thing? It shows what filth my heart is capable of, though. That's what I mean, filthy, vile, vile, vile. And for a whole month I've been." But he could find neither words nor explanations with which to give voice to his disturbed state of mind. The sense of infinite loathing that had begun to crush and sicken his heart, even while he had only been on his way to the old woman, had now attained such dimensions and become so vividly conscious that he was quite simply overwhelmed by his depression. He moved along the pavement like a drunkard, not noticing the passers-by and knocking into them, and only recovered himself when he reached the next street. Looking round, he observed that he was standing beside a drinking den, the entrance to which lay down from the pavement, at the foot of some steps in some basement. Just at that moment, two drunks emerged from the doorway and began to clamber their way up to street level, supporting each other and cursing. Without so much as a thought, Raskolnikov went down the steps. Never before had he been a visitor to the drinking dens, but now his head was spinning, and, what was more, he was parched by a burning thirst. We've all heard that before. He wanted some cold beer, all the more so since he attributed his sudden state of debility to the fact he had nothing in his stomach. In a dark and dirty corner, he found himself a seat at a sticky little table, asked for some beer, and drank his first glass of it with avid greed. The relief he experienced was total and immediate, and his thoughts brightened up. This is all a lot of nonsense, he thought to himself. There was no need for me to get into such a flap. It was just physical exhaustion. One glass of beer, and in a single moment the mind gains strength. One's thought grows lucid and one's intentions firm. Pah! What trivial rubbish all of this is. But, this contemptuous spirit notwithstanding, he already looked cheerful, as if he had suddenly freed himself from some terrible burden, and cast his eyes around at the other people there in a friendly manner. But even as he did so, he had a distant sense that all of this optimism was also morbid. At that time there were only a few people left in the drinking den. The two men he had encountered on the steps had been followed out almost immediately by a whole crowd of about 5, with one tart and a concertina. After their departure, the place seemed quiet and empty. There remained one fellow, a tradesman by the look of him, who was intoxicated, but only slightly, sitting with his beer, and his companion, an enormous, fat, grey-bearded man in a Siberian kaftan, thoroughly intoxicated, who had fallen asleep on a bench, and who every so often, suddenly, as though in his sleep, snapping his fingers and throwing his arms apart, would begin to make the upper part of his body jerk up and down, and without getting up from his bench, croon some nonsense or other, making an effort to remember the words, which sounded something like, "1 whole year his wife stroked, 1 whole year his wife he stroked." Or, having woken again, down the civil servants' road, there he found his girl of old. But no one shared his happiness. Indeed, his silent companion viewed all of these sudden explosions with hostility and suspicion. There was yet another man in the den, who, by his outward appearance, could have been taken for a retired civil servant. He was sitting apart from the other men in front of his jug of vodka, from time to time taking a sip from his glass and looking around him. He also appeared to be in a state of agitation. End of chapter 1.